Roll.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
Here.
Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Councilmember Danuski.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Sperry.
Here.
Councilmember Herbig.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't play favorites here, but the Honorable Mr. Hensel, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You didn't think I'd let you get out of here, did you? All right. So, first item on the agenda then is the approval of the agenda. And I think for simplicity and because of schedules, I want to move items A and B and flip them if there's no objections. And
Items A and B where? On the business
on the
agenda?
business agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
So why don't you just tell us what's going to be first on the business agenda?
Discussion regarding 182nd Street following the state, and then next will be the state legislative review, and we'll stop this one when Senator Frocht gets here.
So what you're saying is that we would start with the Northeast 182nd
That's correct.
discussion with the, that we would go back to item A when the senator arrives?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if there's no objections, the agenda will stand approved as modified. Next item then is citizen comments. This is an opportunity to express your views on issues that are important to you and to the community. We ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody signed up?
David Markley.
Mayors, members of the council, thank you very much for letting me present to you some thoughts as it relates to the 182nd matter. My name is David Markley. I'm a principal and founding principal of the firm Transportation Solutions Incorporated, a consulting firm that specializes in transportation engineering and transportation planning.
Could you please give your address
this evening?
Could you please state your address?
Of course. 8250 165th Avenue Northeast, Redmond, Washington, 98052.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here this evening representing James G. Murphy Company, who are concerned about making the council making a firm decision tonight as it relates to the 182nd proposed solution. We believe the goals need to be more clearly defined, appropriate studies need to be performed, and a more realistic set of solutions developed, and then finally a fair and more inclusive solution-making process be developed. We find that the approach and the intentions of the 182nd improvements are appropriate, and responding to the citizens' concerns is absolutely one of the highest priorities of you, the City Council. We have concerns with the proposed solution because it creates an artificial dead end mid-block. One of the options would require use of a private driveway to accomplish the hammerhead function of the turnaround. It may do little to reduce the speeds, particularly in the direction of flow that's permitted. The intended parking lane buffer will only work if cars are parked there. Otherwise, it could create a contraflow, illegal contraflow direction for people because of the wide space that's permitted. The proposed design would not generate a substantial amount of new curbside parking because the site triangles around the driveways, as the city has provided in other locations, would be limited. And the available travel width with the parking does not appear to satisfy fire code requirements that would allow fire vehicles to pass through freely. We believe a more quantitative approach needs to be taken. We think there are solutions in reducing travel lane widths, raised delineators, including textured and raised thermoplastic, raised curbing, nail-down delineators and raised markings, the possibility of a lift of asphalt on the sidewalk, or if you want to get really creative, a Warniff, which is a wiggly road. It's a fancy European name for a wiggly road. We would like the council this evening to postpone the selection as it relates to this improvement option, ask staff to readdress the community concerns in a more inclusive process, develop a recommended approach through a council study session, and refine a recommendation that does not have the unintended consequences that we believe the preferred solution has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Markley. As you know, we will be discussing that tonight.
Thank you.
There's no one else signed up.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard? Thank you very much for your comments, and Mr. Markley, as I said, we will be discussing that tonight. So then next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda stands approved as written. Next item on the agenda then is a discussion regarding Northeast 182nd Street pedestrian improvement options. Mrs. Overlease. Mr. Schock.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. We are here tonight. My name is Brett Schock, traffic engineer with the city. I have Chris Overlease, Public Works Director, with me. We are here tonight to discuss some options on Northeast 182nd Street between 68th Avenue and 73rd Avenue. We're going to be looking at the study objectives, what prompted this presentation, the existing conditions that are out there on 182nd Street between the limits defined, some identified alternatives that have been developed, and then discuss some next steps and recommendations, which would include some public outreach and coming back to council. At this point, we're more looking for a direction, just to make sure that we're headed in an appropriate manner. So the objectives of this study, due to citizen concerns that were raised through our CARS system and at previous city council meetings, at the direction of city council, we are looking to increase pedestrian safety on 182nd Street. The concerns are due to both the facilities available for pedestrians and the speeds of traffic. The existing conditions, the lane widths vary between 10 and 12 feet. We do have locations where there's only 20 feet of available asphalt right now. There is no existing pedestrian facility that is defined between the City Hall parking lot and 70th Lane Northeast, which is about halfway between 68th and 73rd near the apartment buildings. Especially on the south side, where there are a number of pedestrians, school children are picked up there. There's school bus stops, which you can see in the photo. And there's a very constrained right-of-way. There's not a lot of room out there to make large-scale improvements. So the first potential alternative is a one-way street. It would be in the eastbound direction between the City Hall parking lot driveway and 70th Place Northeast. This would be one way in the current westbound lane, which would leave the southern lane open to be repurposed as on-street parking, taking up about 8 feet of width, which would leave between 2 and 4 feet to add to the existing pedestrian facility, giving us about 4 to 6 feet of continuous pedestrian facility connecting the sidewalks between 70th Place and 73rd Avenue, as well as the sidewalks in front of City Hall. As a side benefit, we do get the on-street parking that will serve to protect the pedestrians when vehicles are present, and also add to the available parking in this area where parking is a concern. This is just a layout of the option. As you can see near the City Hall driveway, there's a small shift into the opposite lane. Those boxes are the available widths in between driveways. Obviously, we'll be evaluating site triangles and safety to determine how much parking could be provided. And then near 70th Place, which is near the apartment buildings about halfway through, we shift back to regular operation two-way out to 73rd, which is out on the right. These are just some sections depicting this alternative. The one on the left is the existing two-way, roughly 20 feet consistently between the limits defined, and then we would change that to one 10-foot lane with 8 feet of on-street parking and a 4 to 6 foot pedestrian walkway. The existing parking that is on the north side of 182nd Street between these limits would not be affected. Although the traffic would be moving the opposite direction, that parking would remain in place. It would remain two-way to the City Hall driveway, so City Hall's parking lot would be able to operate in both directions. And at the apartments on 70th Lane and just south of there, any drivers that do go down 182nd at the beginning of operations expecting to go all the way to 68th could turn around at those locations, go back and use 181st, which would connect to 68th. We will be signing this at 73rd Avenue. There'll be some temporary signage, especially at implementation, to warn drivers about the change. And typically, a driver will only go down the wrong way once and have to turn around, and they'll know for the next time to use 181st. So some of the benefits, we definitely meet the objective of increasing pedestrian safety, providing additional facilities, which meets the Target Zero and Council Goal Number 1 objectives. As a benefit, we get some additional on-street parking. We will see some traffic calming effect from increased friction that will have parked cars on both sides of the roadway, as opposed to right now where it's only on one side. And the school and the fire district, who were both consulted prior to coming to council, both prefer the eastbound direction in support of the way they operate right now on 182nd. A couple of drawbacks would be initial confusion among drivers and the need for an adjustment period, and some additional volumes which would be seen at the signals on 181st Street, but those are not likely to overwhelm those signals. Alternative B is a similar layout, the only difference being a reversal of the direction. So the flow would be to the west towards 68th. Again, still providing the parking, openings of the driveways, the protected pedestrian walkway, but it would be two-way to the same limits, but westbound operation in between City Hall driveway and 70th Lane. Just some cross sections to show, nothing really different other than the direction of travel. The north side parking would still not be affected. The two-way from 73rd to 70th Lane for the apartment complexes would not be affected, and the turnaround at City Hall parking lot would be for traffic that is headed eastbound and encounters the new one-way. And again, signing would still be put up in a temporary nature to warn drivers of the change. So the benefits of Alternative B, it still provides the additional pedestrian facility, meeting Target Zero and Council Goal Number 1. We do still get the on-street parking and the calming effect from the friction of the increased parking. We still have the same initial possible confusion for drivers during the adjustment period, some additional volume on the signals at 181st, and as I mentioned earlier, the school and fire districts do prefer the eastbound operation as opposed to west. Just one more time comparing the two alternatives. The biggest difference between the two being the preference of the school and fire districts for the eastbound operation, but both provide the new 4 to 6 foot protected pedestrian walkway when cars are parked. Another alternative that we looked at, mostly addressing the traffic speed concerns, is to provide some chicanes in the same limits between the City Hall lot and 70th Lane. This does not specifically provide a wider pedestrian facility. Pedestrian safety would be addressed through slower traffic through the chicanes, but it does not provide more physical space. There is no added parking, and actually, depending on the positioning of the chicanes, some of the north side parking may be eliminated, as it would be blocked by the chicane. This is just a sample layout. You can see the 2 chicanes there in the middle of the stretch between the City Hall lot and 70th Lane. These would be one-way chicanes, so traffic would have to yield to any oncoming vehicles, which would significantly slow through traffic. And just a small section showing that we would reduce the lane width enough that the emergency vehicles, fire trucks especially, would be able to still navigate the chicane, but enough that it would block each lane alternatively and force cars to make that quick turning maneuver at low speed. So the benefits of this alternative is a definite traffic calming effect, and the lower vehicle speeds will provide some pedestrian safety, but emergency response vehicles would have to navigate the chicanes, and there is no physical pedestrian improvement on 182nd. We don't gain any on-street parking. We may actually lose a space or two on the north side. So those are the drawbacks of this alternative. And finally, obviously, we can just go ahead with what we have out there right now, not do any rechannelization, and try and address the speed issues through the city's normal calming policy or even the neighborhood transportation plans. This is in the Blue North neighborhood, which is one of my first neighborhoods that's currently going through the process right now. So our next steps, this discussion with council and selection of a preferred alternative from what we've got today. We are open to any discussion or feedback on any other alternatives that might be worthwhile in pursuing. But again, our main goal was to increase the pedestrian safety on 182nd. Benefits to traffic and parking were sort of secondary considerations. We would do some public notification and gather feedback, trying to see any unintended consequences. Anything that we haven't thought of in this process, and then we would loop back to council to present our findings before we go ahead with a final solution, hopefully by the end of 2015.
So if I can just emphasize the fact that you're not going to make a final decision tonight, we still have yet to go and get feedback from the affected neighborhood.
Correct. So as it stands right now, our staff recommendation is alternative A, the eastbound operation one way, mostly because of the preference of the school and fire districts on the direction. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Smith.
Thanks, Brett, for the presentation. I have a question on the right-of-way. You said that there's only asphalt for, I think you said, 10 to 12-foot lanes currently. Is there additional right-of-way, though, that's not paved over?
There is a small amount of right-of-way on the north side that is not paved over. That's what's currently being used for parking for the most part in between these limits. The south side has some shoulder paving. It's a little broken in places, and there are places where it really does pinch down.
Is it a consistent right-of-way all the way across?
There might be 1 or 2 points where it actually does, especially off the south side, that it pushes in more so than in front of the trailer.
Okay, and do you know what the right-of-way width is by any chance?
I don't know offhand.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Danuski.
I have a question. I love how you've thought out of the box. I myself am not a huge fan of A and B. I think it's going to be very confusing to have two-direction traffic at both ends and one way in the middle, especially switching yourself to the opposite lane of travel. I'm fearful of a head-on collision there, especially. I know you said it may people would get confused once, but you've got a lot of single-use drivers there with the Murphy's parking lot and with visitors to the trailer park and the senior housing there. So I do have some concerns on that. It seems like there may be one option that seems kind of obvious to me that I'm not seeing here. Can you talk about maybe like a lower speed limit, 20 miles an hour, plus some speed humps, and how that's not considered or presented?
The lowering of the speed limit, if we do speed humps, that may be something that could be pursued. But without any physical changes, we would be in a situation where enforcement would be needed to react to that lower speed limit. The other thing is that we're trying to do something that is more of an interim condition until we do have other improvements to the pedestrian facilities, and the placement of speed humps would be a more permanent fixture than the striping and signing that would be used.
Would it be more permanent than the chicanes, though? You'd have to. Those are both permanent, right?
The chicanes could be created out of other in-road facilities and striping. We could use, the planters to provide the block and do some striping that shows where the chicane.
And we can do speed bumps, traffic circles, and that would be the kind of do nothing as part, this analysis, but use our neighborhood transportation planning process. That's what that money is for, is speed bumps, traffic circles. So we definitely can go that route and do just physical treatments in the roadway to slow people down. I think that's always an option. I think what it comes down to for me was trying to, on a very narrow right-of-way, constrained area where you don't really have the real estate to widen out, is to take something we already have and carve out space for pedestrians. So that's what A and B do that the others don't, is create that width for the peds.
Thank you.
But I do want to reiterate that speed humps are a possibility, and if you wanted to direct us to look into that, we can definitely come back and give you a speed humps alternative.
All right, so I've got Councilmember Curtis, I've got Deputy Mayor, and I have gotten Councilmember Herbig. And we know the sound is there. We don't know what the sound is. And I think
The sound.
there's an underlying noise that everybody is hearing, or quite a number of us are hearing.
I guess.
And it's quite annoying, but we're trying to figure out what it is. All right, so, and if we could turn it off, we would. So, Councilmember Curtis.
So I drive home that way regularly, and there are frequently kids playing along the edge with their balls kind of rolling across the road. So it really is a pedestrian safety issue. The thing, I prefer A, and the thing I like about that is it does improve safety. It also gives the extra parking spots, and it's flexible enough when that whole area develops. You just get rid of it and do whatever standard kind of approach we'd want to do. So it gives a lot of flexibility. I did have a question. How many parking spots would actually fit along there?
I did not look at how many would be restricted by site triangles, but based on just the raw length that we have available, probably 19 to 20.
Okay. And then the other question I had, do we have the permission of the private people that we would be using as turnarounds?
That's part of the public outreach.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Was the total right-of-way on 182nd equal width all the way to 73rd at one time? And when the east end of 182nd was developed with condos and apartments and so on, and the senior living facility, was it a requirement of that new construction to give right-of-way for the road, and therefore it's wider?
That's my expectation. That's what I expect happened out there.
So the reason we're doing this is for the people living in the trailer park and safety to those people and waiting for the school bus that comes down. A lot of kids running back and forth in there. Plus, there are the people that would be using the increased parking. So the trailer park would benefit in terms of safety and increased parking. Does anybody else benefit from this plan? No.
Well, I think I walk on 182nd. I think it is
Okay.
not true that only people that live in the trailer
Okay.
park are
The-
walking
the
on
chief-
182nd.
The chief people that walk there are the people in the trailer park.
Yes. So I think anybody that's inclined to walk on 182nd.
Yeah, okay.
And I also think that
Okay.
parking could be used by the city, by the nearby businesses. It's not going to be parking for any specific entity.
Okay.
So it'll be open for all.
I know, open for all, but I would bet you that the bulk of the people that walk there will be people from the trailer park. The bulk of the people that park there will be from the trailer park. Okay, they're the ones that benefit from this. Everybody else is inconvenienced by it. All the traffic, Stacy mentioned traffic coming in every which way. She didn't mention the diversion traffic, the people that don't even live in Kenmore. I can just imagine what's going through their heads if they run into this. What are they thinking doing this? It just doesn't seem to be a logical solution to the problem. The logical solution to the problem is get more right-of-way. But that means putting a bunch of trailer park people out of their homes in order to get that right-of-way. But that's going to happen when it redevelops anyway. So maybe, my thoughts are maybe the trailer park people should give up something to get the safety that they should have. The problem is minimal right-of-way. And we're going through all these gymnastics in traffic engineering to work around the minimal right-of-way. And I just don't like it. I don't like the dead end and turning around in people's parking lots and all that. It just doesn't seem like the sensible way to resolve the problem. The sensible way is to get more right-of-way and put a sidewalk all the way down. But that means displacing people from their homes. So I don't know. It's a tough problem.
Councilmember Herbig.
No, I walked this stretch twice just a couple nights ago, heading over the 192 to meet a friend. And I know that we've had seniors living in the senior housing who have actually wanted to come to city council meetings but haven't been able to make the walk because they don't feel safe walking down that stretch. So I think it serves much more than just the folks in that particular property. And it is a serious public safety issue. I know that when I'm walking down that street, I'm constantly checking over my shoulder to make sure that their car isn't coming up behind me because there's only a couple of feet there. So I could generally go with A or B. I have a quick question though. Did you look at maybe just, I know with some bike lanes, we'll just, not us, but I've seen other cities install the plastic bollards to kind of give you a visual separation between the pedestrian area and the cars. Is that something that was considered here at all?
That would be an option, but there are some locations where we only have 2 10-foot lanes right now. So it wouldn't move the edge line over very much. It would make it more visible. That would be a low impact option, but we wouldn't gain much width in terms of the pedestrian.
And when you're talking about speed humps, I assume you're talking about speed cushions, or are you talking full-on humps?
Probably do the 10-foot with the cut for the emergency vehicles.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Sperry, do you have anything before I start with the second round?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of hard. Well, I've tried to understand this, and I just feel like we would be. I mean, I appreciate the rechannel. I appreciate the creativity with the rechannelization, but I do feel like it's very confusing. And one of the things, we've heard from a business here that's just starting to put in a huge parking lot, which I assume will be for auction people. And we haven't really considered that impact or what that business might need in terms of getting people in and out. And that's, a big deal too. So I guess for me personally, I would like to sort of start with the smaller steps before we start moving people. You can go this far on this side and that far. I have been known to go down the wrong way on one-way streets that are clearly marked and they have, they're through. So this to me feels like it would just be very confusing for a lot of people. So.
Quick question. Is there an exit onto 181st Street from that property?
No.
From the trailer?
Yeah, Yeah.
No.
I know, so that's a separate, different, totally different one, separated by the fence that is on this end
Yeah.
of 181st. Okay. Councilmember Smith, you had a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, I assume have you had time to see the letter that was handed out from TSI? Okay.
I have not.
You haven't? Okay. I was curious if you had any comments regarding what was in the letter. So that was my first question. Then I would say, one of the things in here is mentioned a council study session. I don't believe we need a council study session on it, but I will also add that I had not initially thought about the impacts to the properties to the north and how, if you are running a business right there, this would be a pretty significant inconvenience because your business entry is just feet away and you may literally have to drive all the way around the block to get there. And that does seem like a relevant issue. And so I actually kind of liked A, but I would like to know more about the speed humps and possibly just a speed reduction and see how that would factor in. But I do find that to be compelling as far as the improvements that are being made to the business to the north.
Yeah. May I offer something? For me, what it really comes down to, and I appreciate Brett's creativity, we kind of asked him to look at it and didn't give him any direction. So I think he's given us some good things to think about, but it really comes down, we can traffic calm the heck out of that road. We can put speed bumps, we can chicanes, we can slow cars down with physical devices. There's just no doubt in my mind where exactly they would go. Brett would design that and figure that out. Just that doesn't give you a pedestrian facility where people have, in some places, more than 2 feet of width of asphalt. So I think it's if we're okay with just slowing cars down, we can do that without a whole lot more investigation. Brett can just design it and we can do it. But if there's an interest in providing a wider shoulder for people to walk on, short term as an interim measure, I think A or B is pretty much how you can do that.
Can I ask you a question on where because it turns one way just after you hit the City Hall entry to the parking lot. If that were to be shifted a little bit further to the east so that it could actually, then the business could have served correctly with 2 lanes without having to go around the block, and it would actually also benefit those all the people in that trailer park right there. I'm just wondering, is that an option? Is that a viable option of just shifting, maybe still going with the one way so you eliminate a lot of the traffic that runs through there, but you've actually allowed egress and ingress for the properties that are right there at that location?
Yeah, that's something I can look at, is where that driveway is located and how much of an impact we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Councilmember Sperry mentioned the change and the adjustment to it, and you've talked about local people doing it once and running into a dead end once, and I mentioned that there's a lot of diversion traffic that goes both ways on 182nd, mostly eastbound at night in the evening and westbound during the morning hours. And I remember when we put the stop signs in here in front of the post office. I mean, just a simple 4-way stop with signs and big canisters, orange canister there, and big sign and signs ahead of time, and people were still crashing into each other there for quite a while for something as simple as a 4-way stop. And then this seems to be a lot more complex than a 4-way stop. And I just envision all sorts of problems with it. And yes, people would adjust to it, but there are a lot of people that are not Kenmore residents. I'm really in favor of just slowing the traffic down. As a Kenmore resident, if I want to get from my home up on the hill here over to some place over in Lori's place over off 73rd, I don't mind going 10 miles an hour across 182nd. But if I'm commuting then I'd like to go 40 miles an hour on 182nd. So, I mean, is it our job to provide a commuter thoroughfare on 181st and 182nd, which it is during rush hour traffic? There's a lot of diversion that goes on those roads, and then comes to the left down 68th and over 181st and all the way over and up into Uplake and then down on 522. I've watched them, and they're not Kenmore residents. So I just see just slowing it down would solve the safety problem to some degree. It wouldn't create more walkway. But again, we have walkway in the eastern half of it because when it was redeveloped, they put in, the requirement was to put a sidewalk in and setbacks, and we gained right away where it was developed, and we'll gain right away in the western end of 182nd when it's redeveloped. So whatever we're doing is a temporary fix, and I'd say do it as simply as possible.
Councilmember Curtis and Councilmember Herbig.
So another thing to consider is the Tolt trail will be done, I think, next year, and that gives another access for people to walk on. So even if they can't, a lot of people wouldn't walk on 182nd nearby, they would have an option.
Councilmember Herbig.
There's a lot of, excuse me, sorry. There's a lot of talk here about how this will be confusing or maybe inconveniencing to drivers, but the state of the matter is right now on the street, it's completely unsafe for pedestrians. And it's one of the only major ways we have for folks to get from where I live across the way or for the kids who are living on the street to get anywhere. And I think we owe it to our residents to provide something that is safer than 2 feet of asphalt with no barrier for kids walking there. So I hope as we move forward that we will do something to make it safer for pedestrians, because right now it is, I'm a big guy and I feel completely unsafe walking on that stretch. So
I'm hearing pretty loud and clear that people are concerned with safety, but we don't know that we've necessarily hit the right answer here. Do you guys get any sense of direction?
Well, I'm hearing the fear of confusion, but I can say we're making other traffic safety improvements in this city that are making other cars go longer distances to get to businesses. So they're not being, no business out there is being picked on. We don't think. We were asked to give recommendations, and we gave you kind of a laundry list of them. But the only way you're going to have the ultimate safety for pedestrians is giving them a protected facility, lowering the speed limit. I don't view my job as to argue with you over which one you should pick. We're trying to give you different options and what we think the pros and cons are. And so I'm not really hearing consistent direction at all. I mean, we could study this until the cows come home and look at tons of stuff.
But I've also heard some stuff about speed bumps. I've heard some different other mechanisms mentioned here that aren't necessarily.
So maybe questions are, maybe a simpler question is, do you just want to slow down cars? Or do you want to do, which would be good for everybody, good for cars, good for pets, good for bikes, good for dogs? Or do you want to go one step further for pedestrians and provide them a dedicated facility? So do you want to slow down cars only, or do you want to carve out real estate for pedestrians? Maybe ask those questions, which will kind of guide you to where you want to be.
So we will think of those answers while we take a break and hear from our 3 legislators, Representatives Farrell and Paulette and Senator David Fraught. And while you guys swap places,
Grab this real quick.
I want to take this opportunity to really thank you for the hard work you did last session. I know the decisions, some of the decisions you reached weren't your decisions. I know that there was a lot of compromises made, and I know it could have hurt to take some of the votes that you took and had to respond to. But I want you to know that we definitely appreciate your hard work, and we have a slight feeling what you went through. So thank you for everything that you have done for us so far, and I'm sure will do for us in the future when you're able. So, thank you.
There you go. Can you hear me? There we go.
Recording more than hearing.
Yeah, it's okay. In the Senate, the mics are always, or at the House, they're always on, which sometimes causes problems, as you can imagine. First of all, thank you for indulging me, and I apologize that the agenda was turned around. I want to thank you for accommodating me. I was coming from Renton. We had the Senate listening tour on education funding, which, and actually we were discussing, it was the meeting of the Educational School District, of which North Shore Schools are one of the member districts in the districts, and there were hundreds of people there. So it was from 5 to 7. I was going to try to get out a little bit earlier, but as you can imagine, there was a lot of very strong feelings, and I felt like it was important to me to be there. So thank you for indulging me. I raced up here as fast as I could. I didn't get a ticket, which is good, although I did not use the hot lanes. I thought I would just give a little bit of an overview of the session from our standpoint, and then Jessen, I think, will talk a little bit about transportation. Jerry will talk a little bit about kind of local issues specific to Kenmore. What I would say is the fact that I was at the educational service meeting in Renton is really indicative of what we were really fighting, not fighting about, but what the issues were. That is the reason that we were in session for over 100 and, I don't know, must have been 160 days, which I think was the longest session in recent memory. We went to July 9th before we finally evolved. And it really, the education funding issue continues to animate the entire discussion in Olympia. It actually even came up today in the context of something that's very important to us here in Kenmore and to the 46th District. The Superintendent of Public Instruction got up and said they get $16 billion for transportation funding. I'm just asking for $4 billion or $5 billion for education. That was, and there was uproarious applause down in Renton, and that is, I think, indicative of what the two largest issues were. We had transportation, we had education funding, and you saw in August that we have not resolved things yet. The courts are continuing to hold the legislature's feet to the fire, but I think, in the end, as what usually happens when you have divided government, and even in the situation that we were in, there was a compromise budget that came together, and we did some good things. I think we all feel like the capital budget was a good step forward for the people of the 46th District. The transportation budget, certainly, and the fact that we received, and Justin will talk in more detail about it, about the completion of the 522 project, was really, really strong. And it's a credit to this community that you all were so unified. I think for all of us, we feel are so indebted to you and having such clear priorities that you give to us that we can work on it. And of course, it helps to have Nigel Herbig working closely with our delegation, along with Angie Weiss and Dan Strauss, my legislative aides. They all work together, and we know exactly what Kenmore needs, and you come to us in a great fashion. It's always clear, it's always unified, which is extremely important, and I feel like we have a really good communication level going. So I just want to thank you for what you've done, and we'll be happy to answer any questions about kind of other things we can talk about. I'll turn it over to Justin and Jerry to move forward from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us this evening. It's always a delight to be here. And I, too, echo David's comments that it really is easy to advocate for the city of Kenmore because you do such a great job of having a unified position. You have great representation with Brianna Murray. And just the work that you do, seeing Mayor Baker in Olympia, seeing Deputy Mayor Van Ness at various regional forums, it really matters. And so we appreciate all the work that you do because it really tees it up for us. So there were many things in this transportation package. It was a brutal, difficult session with a brutal, difficult negotiation. But at the end of the day, this community and many other communities across the state have a lot to show for it. And as you well know, and actually I should just start by saying, of course, with divided government, and this year the bill came from the Senate. And so I really have to thank David for all of the work he did to get a lot of our asks in the Senate proposal, so that when it came time to get over to the House, we could really kind of bat cleanup and get all those other things. But David did a really good job of teeing up the 46 districts so that we could kind of round out the asks as we moved through the process. So, but without further ado, I'll just run through. I mean, it's important to celebrate our victories, and let me just go through them. I know you've had a chance to talk about it, but here they are. $12 million for the 522 West B project, fully funded. $8 million to replace the West Sammamish Bridge, fully funded. Sound Transit 3 authorization, which, you know, there are lots of opportunities to get Kenmore's projects into the final project list, and we're going to hope to work together with you to make sure that we're successful there. We got local options for transportation funding, so you can now use your TBD authority for a councilmanic authority of up to $50. There was a local fuel distribution. I know that it wasn't as much as some jurisdictions would like, but at the same time, there was something more than there was. I think in the partnership package from 2005, as I understand it, cities had been left out pretty much entirely. So there's a lot of good news on the transportation front, and I just commend this city for having such a great vision around transportation and being willing to put in local dollars. Again, as we go forward and advocate, it really helps us make our case. And what I would leave you with, I mean, there are all kinds of other interesting policy things that we could talk about in the transportation package, but one thing that's really interesting is this idea of practical design. And the idea is that we have typically done a cookie cutter approach to how we design transportation projects. And the House Chair, Judy Cliburn, and the ranking minority member, Ed Orcutt, really pushed through a policy to use practical design in all of the Connect Washington projects. And what that is going to result in is cost savings. As WashDOT has already implemented this, we've seen 40% cost savings. So the good news is all of those dollars that we think will be saved as these projects come to fruition are going to go into an account where, as future needs come forward, we can advocate and continue to advocate for Kenmore without worrying that 16 years of state revenue is sewn up, because that's not really going to be the case. There will be savings that are realized on projects across the state. So I hope that we get to continue to work with you around transportation project needs, because there will be opportunities to receive state dollars. It won't be for a while, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. But we know that a community's needs change, so we really want to work with you to make sure that we're well positioned to take advantage of those funds as they come forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jerry to talk about some of the other local things that we did.
Thank you.
And did not do.
Get the drift. It's what we didn't do comes down to the last guy speaking. Well, but let me start with some congratulations here to Mayor Baker, who just told me he was going to be speaking at the American Public Health Association in Chicago, national meeting. You may know I teach at the School of Public Health, and last week saw the announcement, and a colleague said to me, "Are you going to go?" And I said, "What for?" Which I had known. It's really a terrific honor, and thank you for your good work, and congratulations. I sit on the Finance Committee, so what is in our little division here wanted to talk about how do we help you with local government finances. You're up against serious crunches, and I think we can start with what bad things didn't happen is that we didn't sweep away liquor revenue from you. And the good news is that we did say we were going to distribute, even before we had marijuana money, we're going to distribute it to counties and cities. And that was reflective of what seems to be a sea change. For the first time, I finally feel as if in 4 years that people are beginning to understand that local governments are an absolute crunch in terms of taxing authority and what you must spend money on, and the fact that you don't have many options. Where this is really going to be critical is the intersection with education policy. Not only for the city, but the other local taxing jurisdictions. You all are facing constitutional limits on property taxes and where we are with the gap. And if we do something that basically says we're going to increase the state's tax take dramatically in King County, which is a lot of what the proposals are for what's called a levy swap, we're going to be using up a lot of the authority in that gap and knocking out lower jurisdictions. So fire, sewer, water, they'll go before you do, but it'll impact you as well. And so I think we finally have some understanding that this is getting to be a grave concern, and we need to be looking at additional funding sources and authorities for the cities. We had a package in 3 of the special sessions for local government financing, and I think it will be back to give you some specific additional authorities. It's really important that we weigh in together for it and that you have a clear vision of what you want, that we work with Brianna on it. But in the long run, what's really important is making the case that we need to make sure that you have the authority and we're not taking away authority from you as with the liquor tax. I think the other only bad news was Public Works Trust Fund. We weren't funding new projects, and that hits really hard at all local governments and local priorities, and it's a shame, frankly. It's a shame that we would essentially raid the Public Works Trust Fund. It's robbing Peter to pay today's bills, and that doesn't make any sense. So that's a little bit of an overview, and then I think we're all interested in how we collaborate over the next year on St. Edward and the seminary. I'm glad to take your questions.
Yeah. Questions? Councilor Smith.
You just, on the very last sentence, you hit on one of the things I wanted to ask you about, so I'll ask you about that first. Is there anything you can offer, the 3 of you, with regards to your thoughts or what's being proposed and just your feeling up at the state park?
I think the 3 of us have tried to be deeply engaged and will be with the Parks Commission, and we need to partner with you on that. But there are some real solid, concrete things that we can do when there is a more final proposal developed. One of the keys has to do with, the issue of 90-year versus 50-year lease. I spoke with Daniels about that, and he expressed a willingness to go with a 50-year lease. And there was a question of whether or not there was authority to do that. I think that if we need to go into the short session and get that authority, it is not out of the question. And so that is one concrete thing that we may be able to do.
Well, I'll just say I think that the community has decided the forum that I went to, I believe it was last spring, where we had input from the community. I was impressed by the willingness for a public-private partnership to make the best use of the building. I've been in the building 2 or 3 times. It is a massive massive overhaul that's going to be required to make it functional. The state, simply is not going to have the money to put into it directly. So I think there has to be some kind of partnership. And so I'm here to support you, but I think that's a realistic vision of where we have to go. And I think the character of the park can be accommodated and maintained overall, and that's my sense of it.
So I know that there's a number of changes that are happening here in the community, and I think you've seen the Spencer 68 property there, and the groundbreaking that is now happening on the link with 20,000 square foot evergreen medical health facility there. And I know that there's many other things that are in the works. But St. Edward's, I think, to see the building saved and to see the possibilities in that park, I think, are very important to the future of the city. And so your support in this process certainly is going to be key. And we certainly appreciate how engaged you are with us, and we're very confident that the engagement will continue. So, any other questions?
Can I just say, one of the things that I feel one of our roles has been to explain to people why the state can't just isn't going to come up with $60 million, and secondly, to explain how a developer using historic tax credits and other tax credits can do something for $25 million in capital that would cost the state $60 million. And that's been hard for people to wrap their head around. And it was something, and I spent a long time after the meeting discussing the forum with people. And I think that's something we all need to share and explain is the cost of a private developer doing something is much less using those historic and other tax credits that are available. And then you just have to make about half of the price pencil out instead of the $60 million that would cost, or $50 million plus for the state to do the same thing.
But I think the bigger question is, so the state put in $60 million, then what? Would it just sit? So at least now you have somebody willing to invest in the property and have a use for the property. Anything else? Wow. Okay. So you are coming back here then, I know, before the next session starts.
We're getting off easy
session.
here.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
We're getting off easy here.
You are getting off easy.
I didn't know what a chicane was until this evening. I'm used to being accused of us engaging in a lot of chicanery.
Well, we are going to be working on our legislative agenda, so you can rest assured that we will have a short, concise list that will be mentioned many times in the next session. But in reality, there was heavy loads that were lifted in this last session. And I know that education has to be dealt with, and I know that's where the pressure is. And being a short session, I think rightfully so that's where the energy is going to be put. So I'm personally not holding out for anything more, but I thank you, really.
Well, I would on that point, if I may, Mr. Mayor, just to say that I know this isn't the school board meeting, but I do want to compliment this community on their support for the public schools that you have here. I mean, you have, if not the best, one of the probably top 5 school districts in the state in terms of how it's run, the outcomes that your students get, your teachers. The schools are amazing. Superintendent Francois, who many of you know, I think is someone that all of us really rely on and talk to about what we should be doing, and he's very insightful and very helpful. So he's a real credit to your community and to the North Shore community, and So I want to thank you for that, and I hope we'll all stay in touch on those issues.
You know, we look around and we hear things on the news and we see what other communities are going through, and I think we all feel very, very fortunate that we have the relationship with the school district and the school board that we have, because I know in the past we've held joint meetings with them so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And I had the occasion to speak at the 50th anniversary of Kenmore High School over the weekend, and that was really quite an honor to see all those people come back for all those classes and to look at what the groundwork that they laid for us. And so being able to speak up there at that Blue Ribbon School was quite an honor representing the city. So we are indeed fortunate, and we really treasure that relationship we have.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Dr. Curtis.
Just a quick question. Have you all seen the skateboard park? The kids are loving it.
I just saw it as I was coming in. They were going at it, and
Still going.
it's dark out there right now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that place is packed all day long.
Not just kids.
No, it's not. It's not just kids, young adults. City Manager.
Yeah, Your Honor, I believe we are going to try to have another legislative send-off event right before the session starts. I think that it'll be either January 7th, that Thursday, or January 8th, that Friday. So we'll be working with you and coordinating calendars.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We like to come.
See if we can get it on there early, right? Then it's not a surprise. And
That's right.
we can give you another good send-off because we really enjoy that. So thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mrs. Overlease, Mr. Schock, do you want to come back for? We've been thinking about those questions.
Your Honor, while they're coming up, if I could just add a couple things. So the city adopted Target Zero, which tries to get to zero pedestrian and bicycle serious injuries and deaths by 2025. And so that's not going to be easy to achieve. It's going to be hard to achieve, and it's going to be painful at times. And because the city's adopted this, we as staff are going to be pretty aggressive, and we're going to be bringing you aggressive and hopefully creative options. And so what Brett has brought for you tonight is under my urging. Both Chris and I have directed him to be aggressive and creative. But the key is we don't want to paint you into a corner either, and we want to make sure that you have options from which to choose. But I think as long as we have this Target Zero philosophy, we are going to continue to be pretty aggressive and creative. You can tell me to back off if you want, and I will, but until I hear that, we're going to continue to be bringing aggressive solutions and options like this.
Councilmember Curtis.
I have a possible suggestion how we might give you more direction. If we broke it into 3 questions, safety, extra pedestrian walkway, and extra parking, and we just sort of went through 1, 2, 3, and we sort of gave it thumbs up, you'd sort of have a clue how far along that pathway we're sort of, as a group, interested in going.
Except that they're carnival and entwined, other than parking.
Yeah.
I don't know how I could save safety.
No,
and
you can do safety things without doing the extra walkway.
Would speed be a better word than safety? Could you say traffic calming,
there we go.
Walkway, parking?
Yes, that would be sort of the intent. Slow people down.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Sabari.
Well, I appreciate, the idea of, refining the process and asking questions. I agree. I appreciate the creativity, and I appreciate looking at different options. I'm just not convinced that the rechannelization, which I realize that the channelization is the way to get to the other options, but I'm just not convinced that that's the way to go. I think what I'd like to see is we already have this neighborhood as part of the neighborhood traffic calming, and I would like to see some of their input on this, what their thoughts are, because these are people that are driving this all the time, that are very familiar with the street, that are walking on the street, and seeing what their thoughts might be. And the other thing is, I do think that we haven't really looked at, speed calming, which we do know is a safety device in terms of pedestrian safety. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, is to look, basically take advantage of the neighborhood traffic planning that we already have and get some input from them on this. I'm fine showing them all these alternatives. I don't really have a problem with that. It's just I personally feel that we sort of haven't started with what we can do in the small incremental steps. That's kind of where I'm at. And, I understand, I respect what my other council members are saying about, trying to give people the pedestrian walkway and all that. But how do you do that? By creating another problem. And so it just doesn't feel done yet. It just feels like we just need to keep working this thing.
So I don't know that we're giving any direction, and I don't know. But I think if we want to see calming measures and what can be done, is that the direction we want to take a look at? Do we want to see this turned into a one-way like staff is recommending? I mean, we sort of can't leave them sitting here. They've come to us to try to get an opinion, and we have to give it to them. So where are we at?
I think.
Councilmember Smith.
Well, I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm not, like I said before, I don't want to repeat it, but I think option A is not unreasonable, but maybe it can be adjusted a little bit to make it more accommodating for some of the residents that are right there, and also for the business to the north. So that's one thing. I'm also interested in knowing about what are the impacts if we just lower the speed limit and have speed humps. Because I will say, even though that option doesn't specifically address a lot of the walkway aspect, but if it is slowing your vehicles down, then it's immediately making it safer for pedestrians, and that's a relevant fact. And then I do think it's also relevant to know what the right-of-way is, because if we've got right-of-way that is there that we don't know, I mean, maybe there's a better long-term solution, and I think that seems like a relevant fact that we would want to know, so we know what's possible within that right-of-way.
Okay, so I heard about three things there.
Yep.
Like A plus a tweak.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include speed bumps, or speed bumps are separate? Not something else you'd like to see, just speed bumps?
Councilmember Danuski brought up the speed humps and a speed reduction. That was something I thought about, but I didn't see it on here, and I assumed there was a reason it wasn't on there. But apparently, it's just it was, as had been explained, there were reasons why it wasn't, and I'd be interested in knowing more about it and how viable of an option.
So A plus tweaks or speed humps. Councilmember Sperry.
Well, I'm not going to repeat what I already said, but maybe a way to move forward on this is to provide two options for public comment. One being the A, which is the rechannelization, and then the B, my new B, or would actually be the last one, which would be basically the speed calming and those sorts of things. Because those seem to be the two things I'm hearing from the council, and maybe that would be a way to give the public and those affected by it some, ways to provide input.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I'm in favor of the speed calming. I think when the toll is there, that'll help some, at least an option for pedestrians that are going around. And when the whole area develops, I think we'll ask for more right-of-way and we'll have more space to work with.
Councilmember Herbig.
Well, first, I want to applaud your creativity and aggressiveness. I appreciate it. I think personally, I would much rather see something that has more than 2 feet pedestrian right away, because I am more than 2 feet wide. I don't feel safe walking down there. So I would be more in favor of option A than other options, although I'm not completely closed off to them. One question I had, so there is essentially spree development going on the north side where the parking lot is being built right now. Does that trigger any of the right-of-way improvements under the road standards, or is that somehow exempt?
I have not talked about it. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm actually going to be meeting internally with our folks in the next week or two. So
because if that was,
I'm not up to speed enough to say either way.
Okay, because that's a long stretch also that could drastically improve the pedestrian experience on, if we can just get it so somebody can walk on one side or the other, that'd be a huge improvement.
But I think it's safe to say at some point in the future, whether it's in the next year or the next 50, when redevelopment happens on both sides of the street, frontage improvements will be built.
Right.
And what we're doing now, with, a couple $1,000s a buck, a couple $1,000 worth of barricade signs and, paint can go away.
Right. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm in favor of traffic calming devices. And there are inexpensive ways to put speed bumps in. They're those rubber things that are just nailed down. And those would be, to me, less expensive than chicanes. But maybe not. What do I know? I don't know what they cost. But still, I think traffic calming is probably the best way to go. Councilmember Herbig says 2 feet of walkway. I thought it was 4 to 6 feet that we have now. And the question is, it's not?
Yeah. The 4 to 6 feet would be in the improved condition. Right now, there's roughly 2 in some places. It goes to about 3.5 feet.
Okay. Is there space you said there is space on the other side of the road, north side, that the pavement doesn't go the full right of way?
Yeah, the north side.
You could shift the lanes north. It would require some more asphalt, I guess. And you could widen the walkway and put a C-curb in there. And that would increase the safety for the people walking there. I think there are other ways. It seems to be such a confusing way of having a one-way street for just a portion mid-block, and for it to start after the City Hall parking lot entrance, because we don't want to disrupt people getting in and out of City Hall, but getting in and out of Murphy's new lot isn't a problem. Or the driveways into the trailer park. They will have only one way in and one way out. So we're inconveniencing those people, but we don't want to inconvenience people getting into City Hall, even though we've got 3 driveways into our parking lot. And I still think a lot of people, if we do Plan A or Plan B, will be asking, what in the world are they thinking? Because it seems like a difficult solution to the problem. And I prefer traffic calming.
Councilmember Danuski.
I'm leaning towards the traffic calming myself. One other thing, Boeing just did something very similar with our entrance. You go through a turnstile, and we used to just go straight across into a parking lot. And now they've shifted the walkway to the right, so we have a walkway and then cars parked there. And when we get to the crosswalk, all of a sudden you're stepping out and there's traffic right there. So I'm sure that you would be looking at that to make sure that right now, even if there's not much room on the side, there's a really good sight distance. You can see, quite a ways down where people are. I'm a little bit worried if we go with option A that kids will be darting over to their cars on the other side and running out between cars. But I'm sure you'll look at where parking is.
You're looking at calming then?
I'm leaning towards calming.
Okay. So, and I'm also leaning toward the calming or speed humps. So then unofficially what we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the calming and 3 on A. So
what I'm hearing you say then is actually I would recommend we leave it as it is and then just let Brett take the neighborhood through the neighborhood transportation plans and talk with the community. And please, speed bumps, chicanes, all that stuff is easy to do. It's flat through there, so we can physical device like crazy. It's not hard, and they're not overly expensive. So we are more than happy to do that, but that's how I would do it. I wouldn't go through a special process. I wouldn't have a special meeting. I would just let Brett's program take its course.
I do have one question. In those neighborhood transportation plans, the downtown wasn't included. The downtown commercial, does that include this little neighborhood?
This neighborhood was added to the Blue North neighborhood because of that concern.
Great. Okay. And then I have a question for council on the traffic calming. Are chicanes out of the question in your mind? Is it speed humps that you want, or chicanes are an option? Okay. I just want to make sure that they're not DOA with you. Okay.
I don't prefer the chicanes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, but I mean, I don't think they're necessarily DOA. But I guess my thought is that's their job. I mean, to come and try to figure out what to do. But I mean, we sort of said we'd certainly like to calm traffic down, and but I think your suggestion also could easily work. Let's let the neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, as part of the neighborhood transportation plans, we're not bringing all those back to council for approval. So Brett will be working with the neighborhoods, and we'll be putting together those programs based on the community feedback. Right. So just to be clear, he'll work with them through that program, but we wouldn't be bringing that. It would be within the confines of the program, which is education, enforcement, and engineering, and all those things would be tools in Brett's toolbox to work on that street.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's a good point. So in a few months from now, you could see chicanes and or speed humps show up on that street without it coming back to you.
Because that's what the community groups had indicated they wanted.
Can I, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Will we get some forewarning on that, just so we know what's happening if we get calls or emails on it, so we at least know what it is? I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I think what will happen is, remember, the end result of Brett's working with any given neighborhood is actually a map that's going to show improvements, and my expectation is that all those maps will be uploaded to the website.
Right.
So I don't know if we would come and tell you every single time, but we certainly, maybe through weekly updates, can let you know that certain neighborhoods, the maps are complete and they're uploaded if you want to go look at them.
That'd be great.
And they'll be prioritized as well as to which ones are happening first, which one's going to be.
And we'll use our best judgment, but we'll definitely give you a heads up on this neighborhood in particular. So,
Deputy Mayor and then Councilmember Herbig.
What do they call the speed bumps that are a small bump in the center and two big ones on the side, so the fire trucks can go down the middle and not go over the bump? What do they call those?
I don't know.
They have them in Bothell.
I've seen them called pillows. But yeah.
No, they're a broad speed bump, probably about 6-8 feet across, and you go up and down.
Yeah. There's pillows and tables and bumps and
humps.
But the fire trucks can go, and their stride, or the wheel width, is greater than the center one, so they can go straight through without bouncing their hoses off the trucks.
Yeah, that's what I was just describing to Councilmember Herbig. Yeah.
Councilmember Herbig.
I'm fine handing this off to the neighborhood traffic program, so long as something actually gets done on the street. I would hate for them to go through the program and the street to be left untouched at the end of it, because it is a serious issue that's not just affecting the neighborhood, but affects people on both sides of 73rd and 68th trying to get around. So,
well, you'll recall each neighborhood has a designated pot of funds to do exactly these things.
Mr.
All right. Councilmember Sperry.
Yes, so actually I'm glad you brought that up, Ms. Overlease, because if this neighborhood, because of this particular street, requires more than that amount, then can you let us know so we can bring it back? Because I know that there is an amount for each one, but I just don't want it to be constrained if there's. I mean, you make sure you have the budget to do what you need to do.
I think we would do that with any neighborhood, frankly.
Okay,
any
great.
neighborhood, once we have the map and we'll see how far the resources go, we'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next item. Update on City Council Goal Number 1 progress, including Target Zero initiative. Ms. Overlease. Ms. Harris. And the chief and a number of people.
Down to pens.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us here today. Up here is Chris Overlease, Public Works Director, Brett Schock, Traffic Engineer, Leslie Harris, Community Relations Manager, and Police Chief Cliff Sether. I am Jenny Pizar. I am a graduate communications intern here at the city, and I've been working on the Target Zero initiative since early April of this year. Today, we will provide an 18-month update on the City Council Goal Number 1 and the Target Zero initiative. This includes the 3 E's: engineering, education, and enforcement. There are a number of programs, policies, and projects that have been implemented within these 3 categories. City Council Goal Number 1 is to focus on and emphasize multimodal transportation safety in the city of Kenmore with a specific focus on pedestrian, bicyclist, and other means of travel. The Target Zero initiative was adopted by Kenmore City Council in April 2014 with the goal of achieving 0 pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities and serious injuries in Kenmore by 2025 by increasing awareness of pedestrian, bicyclist, and driver safety issues. I'll now hand it over to Brett to talk about the engineering programs of the past 18 months.
All right. So this is an overview in no particular order of our engineering efforts. The map you see up here now depicts some areas where we have sidewalk projects of a more significant length that are either currently in design or will be entering the design phase in the next few months. Each of these projects were initiated based on grants, which we have been very successful in pursuing this method of getting larger lengths of sidewalk. We'll have 62nd Avenue, 181st Street on both sides, and Northeast 202nd Street as part of the Safe Routes to School program. And again, each of those are either in the design phase or will be entering the design phase soon. We do have some smaller segments of sidewalk in kind of the 50 to 100 foot range that we do internally without the grants. These sidewalk gaps, 3 of them were completed in the last year. Each of these is near to Simons Road, 72nd just off Simons, 68th near the boat launch right near the intersection with 170th, and 155th Street right near Englemore. Each of these completed a section of sidewalk that was existing and just had a small gap in it. The neighborhood transportation plans, which we've just mentioned previously, is an ongoing process. We've divided Kenmore into 15 neighborhoods, which I'll be meeting with throughout the spring and into 2016. Each neighborhood will have 3 meetings each to take a proactive approach to traffic calming and pedestrian safety and bicyclist safety. We've had some pretty good response from a couple of neighborhoods so far, and looking forward to getting more neighborhoods into the program. We have made some operational changes to prioritize pedestrian safety at our signalized intersections. At 68th and 181st, we've introduced some pedestrian lead time, about 3 seconds that the pedestrian signal goes to walk before the green. And then at Juanita Drive and Arrowhead, to facilitate the school crossing for Arrowhead Elementary, we've added a exclusive pedestrian phase so that the kids can cross with no traffic having a green light. We've also taken a look at an engineering review of 175th Street and determined based on the roadway conditions, the geometrics, and the roadside conditions that we can reduce that speed limit, and that will be implemented in the next few weeks, hopefully. As part of the 522 West A, we are adding new sidewalks along 522. I'm sure you're well aware of this with it all under construction, and that's an ongoing effort. Right now under design and headed into construction next year is the Tolt Trail. This existing utility corridor, roughly around 185th Street, is currently an undeveloped pathway, but it will be developed into a hard surface walkway in 2016.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in here, the bottleneck there is really working with getting the necessary approvals from Seattle City Light, the attorneys, and all that. We are making progress. It's not stalled, but it's slow. We were hoping that we could get under construction this year, but working with the utility company has taken longer than we thought.
All right, our rectangular rapid flashing beacon, RRFB treatments were applied to a number of crosswalks that were at unsignalized locations on our arterial and collector roadways. There were 11 of these in the first group, which included the signage, the flashing beacon, which is solar powered, and the crossing flags. In addition to the markings on the road, we've added some torch down look signals, or look decals for the pedestrians to make sure that they actually watch for the cars. They don't just hit the button and go. Subsequently, we've added another RFB location at 68th Avenue at the Swamp Creek entrance, and we are still open to any other locations that meet our criteria, analyzing other crosswalks.
And if I could jump in here as well. So the 68th Avenue at Swamp Creek crosswalk, I think, is a good example of the local control that you get when you have your own in-house traffic engineer. The King County traffic engineer had looked at that a year or so ago, but when Brett came on board, he took a closer look at it and concluded that one was warranted. I think also the Arrowhead and Juanita intersection and the adjustments that he referred to earlier is another example of that local touch that you get by having an in-house traffic engineer. So I just wanted to mention that. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you. All right, 61st Avenue was rechannelized with a road diet, basically taking a 4-lane section down to 2 lanes, one in each direction, with a center turn lane and bicycle lanes on the outside in either direction. This helps to reduce top-end speeds. It provides, obviously, bike facilities, dedicated bike facilities, and it makes pedestrian crossing a lot safer by reducing the number of lanes pedestrians have to actually cross. On Juanita Drive, we made some improvements to the roadside walkway. The lanes were narrowed, and the markings were widened in many locations. The improved crosswalk, there is an RRFB location on Juanita. The torch down symbols, which you can see here, there are locations where there are raised reflector markings on Juanita, and sharrows were placed in the downhill direction for cyclists. When 68th Avenue was overlaid north of 182nd this past summer, we made some improvements to the shoulder, which is pretty heavily used as a walkway. We narrowed the lanes to match Juanita, so the lanes are consistent on either side of the river now. And we have a widened edge line as well as some raised reflector markers on the shoulder, just to draw attention that there are walkers over there. Internally, we have implemented CityWorks, which is a program which takes all of our citizen requests, which do frequently mention pedestrian issues, collects them into a central location and distributes them to each employee, and puts them on a map. We can search who the caller is, how to get back in touch with them, what their specific issue was. This is something that council is going to see in a future meeting, get some training on it, but it's helped to really consolidate our approach to the citizen requests. We are in the process of updating our roadway standards from the 2007 King County standards. These new standards are going to incorporate a number of additional facilities for cyclists and pedestrians as new development does occur in Kenmore. We're open to narrower lanes, between 10 and 12 feet, not just specifying 12 feet. There's a lot more requirements for sidewalk and amenity zones. And again, this will be for all new developments. And design will be getting underway soon for replacement of the West Sammamish River Bridge. This is a photo of the existing facility on that structure. It's going to be replaced by a wider separated shared path for cyclists and pedestrians, providing a much safer and more open facility as part of the completed bridge. And now I'll turn it back over to Jenny.
Thank you, Brett. Our educational programs and events have increased public visibility of the city's commitment to the Target Zero initiative and established Kenmore as a regional leader in multimodal transportation safety. In addition to the events, we've been very busy executing an extensive communications plan. This includes in-depth safety tips, which are available online and have been distributed to local schools. We have also had ads in the Kenmore Reporter, frequent Target Zero pieces via news releases, our e-newsletter, our printed newsletter, and social media channels. These include Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor, and Instagram. We promote Target Zero and our Target Zero initiative as well as national awareness campaigns. This week is Teen Driver Safety Week, and we are focusing our social media efforts accordingly. We've also provided teen driver safety information to Inglemoor High School. Following the adoption of the Target Zero initiative, the City Council created an ad hoc committee. This committee was meant to help with pedestrian and bicycle safety. The committee has met a number of times and produced a report outlining 14 short-term recommendations along with 5 long-term recommendations. Many of these are already being addressed by current programs and policies. During the past 18 months, I've been able to work on several events, which has been very fun. We have targeted our outreach towards city events as well as community events. Community events include the Bastyr Urban Food Fair, pictured here, the North Shore Fire Pancake Breakfast, and the Arrowhead PTA Back to School Day. With the help of our Target Zero outreach team, we've been able to attend more events, some of which we wouldn't have been able to do without them. Some of our volunteers include Nikki Delgado, a high school senior who is pictured here, Monique Morgan, who is able to work with Julie Krause-Gorham at the Arrowhead PTA night, Jacqueline Reeves, and Ashley Cranston, Miss King County East Side. They've all been wonderful to work with this past summer. Last year, we created a Target Zero safety toolkit, which includes a large information display board and this fun spin wheel you see in front of you on the pictures. The spin wheel is a kid favorite as they get the opportunity to spin the wheel and land on either pedestrian, bicycle, or car and answer a corresponding safety question. We also always include free Target Zero giveaways such as blinky lights, blinky reflective lights, tote bags, and reflective stickers. These activities have been a great addition to the city events such as Kenmore Playday, the Summer Concert Series, and National Night Out. We also plan to have a presence at the upcoming annual Christmas tree lighting in early December. In addition to city events, we have also organized some other fun events, one of which includes Bike to Work Day, which was held on May 15th. Bike to Work Day is part of National Bike Month, and it promotes bicycling as a healthy alternative to commuting to and from work. For this event, we hosted a family-friendly party at 192 Brewery, which included live music, free giveaways, and photos. We had the opportunity to partner with local bike businesses, including Speedy Reedy, Corpusano Physical Therapy, and Bothell Ski and Bike. We also partnered with Cascade Bicycle Club, who attended the event. We handed out fun and practical Target Zero bike straps for bike riders, and they were a big hit. Other fun events include our new pop-up parties. We started these this past summer, and it's a really fun way to engage with the public and build relationships with both Kenmore residents and visitors. We set up the Target Zero tent along the Burt Gilman Trail in the Rhododendron Park and informed people about Target Zero. We also provided free snacks and a fun, friendly atmosphere. We received great feedback on these events and plan to do another one this fall, hopefully at the Kenmore Park and Ride, where we can remind transit drivers to be safe and be seen as they get to and from their destinations. This picture shows that we've also partnered with North Shore Utility District to provide reflective safety vests for kids at a few of our events this summer. They were a big hit with both kids and parents. Most recently, we had International Walk to School Day, which was October 7th. We partnered with Safe Kids East Side and the Arrowhead Elementary PTA, which allowed us to expand our efforts from last year. This year, we had a before-school event near Arrowhead Elementary, and we handed out pedestrian safety packets, which included safety information, Target Zero reflective stickers, and Safe Kids reflective keychains. We reached approximately 50 kids that morning, which, considering the weather, was actually very good. We were also present at Morelands Elementary after school, handing out the same safety packets and the NUD reflective vests. It was really cool because after the event, Morelands Elementary contacted us and requested an additional 125 items to hand out to all of their first grade classrooms to complement a unit they were doing on safety. Safe Kids Worldwide is a national partner of Scholastic, which is where we get the Clifford the Big Red Dog. They put together a storybook, and it was developed to promote pedestrian safety. These books were handed out at Arrowhead K-2 classrooms, along with a fun activity book that was designed for kids a little older, grades 3 through 5. This past Saturday, Chief Souther read Clifford Takes a Walk at the Kenmore Library to around 30 people. There will be 3 more Clifford readings at Kenmore Elementary Family Night later this month. Also, as part of our efforts, we sell helmets here at Kenmore City Hall. They are available to toddlers, kids, and adults. We provide a way for residents to purchase a helmet at a lower cost than going to a store. We use a distributor who only sells to organizations who focus on safety. The cost is donation-based, and we never turn anyone away. To date, we've sold about 100 helmets, and just sold one this morning, actually. Everyone that comes in is very appreciative of the low cost. I will now turn it back over to Brett to discuss city staff training. Thank you.
All right, this year, city staff has taken advantage of numerous opportunities to learn more about innovative treatments and design guidance for focusing on pedestrians and cyclists in addition to cars in our projects. We have attended NACTO, which is the National Association of City Transportation Officials, training on their guideline, which is seen as one of the more innovative sets of documents for looking at intersections and city streets, urban streets. We've also attended Vision Zero workshops. City manager and myself actually attended that. We've had webinars with worldwide leaders in Vision Zero design, which is similar to Target Zero. And then I actually just attended the traffic safety conference presented by WashDOT this past week. Similar information, but again, it was a very good look at what other cities are doing and what's kind of the forefront of design to keep pedestrians safer and make accommodations for cyclists. The comprehensive plan update for Kenmore included an update of the transportation element. It included the bike priority network that you see here. There was also a pedestrian priority network included, which just helped to give these two modes a stronger footing compared to the vehicles when we're considering our future projects. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chief Seether for enforcement.
Okay. So for the enforcement, we have some challenges that we addressed of enforcing pedestrian and bicycle and motorist safety at the major intersections of SR 522. It's very difficult to do that with a vehicle because there's no place to really stage the car and to take off after violators. So we reached out to the city of Covington, and Chris Williams is a motor officer down there. He used to be our part-time motor officer here years ago, and he agreed to come up here on an overtime basis to help us enforce the major intersections on 522, and he was very effective. Of course, there's a lot of there were some challenges with him also because of the time of day, how long it takes him to get from Covington after 4 o'clock, and then of course the weather. So we'll be looking at using him in the future, and we're also looking at some other options that might be available to us. We decided that we're going to force all road users, not only just pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. So we continue to enforce the pedestrians, make sure they don't cross mid-block, and if they do, they get a ticket, and to watch to make sure that they're crossing the major intersections in accordance with the signals. Bicyclists, failure to stop signs is one of our biggest violations that we have in the city with them. We continue to enforce that. And the red light, it's not really a big problem with bicyclists. It's just mainly on the trail and on the back roads with the stop signs. The motorists, failure to yield pedestrians at the crosswalk, we've been hitting that pretty hard, along with the distracted driving. So we're looking for those are the two major violations that we are doing an emphasis on. Okay? The Burke-Gilman Trail, many people complain that at 175th and 61st is one of the most challenging intersections for bicyclists and motorists in the city. It is where we have the highest mixture of bicycle and motorists. So just going down there and watching the bicyclists and the motorists, it was very obvious that nobody obeys the law at all down there. It's just everybody's oblivious to it. So after about 350 tickets later for bicyclists and probably around 50 tickets for motorists, we did an emphasis down there all summer long. And did we make an impact? No, not at all. It just, we go down there and watch it. It's like I'll go down there on a day when we're not doing enforcement. It's like we weren't even there. It's just going to be continuing effort there to change people's habits. Okay. We started a reward program with McDonald's in Kid Valley to reward good behavior. So what we did is we targeted the youth who were riding according to the laws and wearing helmets. We'd hand out these milkshake, or you can get at McDonald's had a milkshake or ice cream cone gift certificates, which was pretty effective. The kids really enjoyed getting those. And I also used those for down there at the Burke-Gilman Trail. So when I was handing the parents the ticket, I'd give the kids the gift certificates. And, sometimes it worked well and sometimes it didn't. Okay. Sixth grade classroom, and we go out there to all the 3 schools, elementary schools. We have 3 50-minute classes that we go out each year and talk to the 6th graders. We talk to them about a wide variety of subjects, and safety is one that we've hit really hard here lately. How to walk to and from school safely, how to make good decisions, and what the consequences of making bad decisions are. It's been very well received, and the kids really enjoy the interaction with the police officers. Myself and Detective Wilcox are the 2 people that go out and teach these classes, and we'll continue doing it as long as the schools allow us to come in there. School zone enforcement is one thing that we've always done and will continue to do. We basically have, I think we made a huge impact on 73rd since it's a main thoroughfare. When we first started this years ago, in all the school zones, we were probably writing 10 to 15 tickets a day. And now we are down to, like on 73rd, some days I don't get any, and some days I'll get 1. So it's been a big reduction there. Arrowhead, just because of the nature of how traffic stacks up, we go up there and enforce that. But it's, the same thing. We don't write a huge amount of tickets up there, but we will continue doing the school zone enforcement as a #1 priority. Okay.
All right. And in addition to the police's great efforts in the school zones, we're doing our homework on one of the recommendations from the ad hoc committee to look into the automated speed camera enforcement. We took some data at the end of last school year, taking some data right now, just to take a look at what we're actually seeing speed-wise in the school zones. And we're also doing some research on other neighboring jurisdictions' experience with those camera systems. And we hope to bring a report to council later in 2015.
And if I could add one more thing on the enforcement side, I'm grateful to have a chief of police who is what I call a working chief who leads by example. I think he may be our leading officer when it comes to writing tickets. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't think he likes to broadcast that, but I think it might be a true statement. So he doesn't just sit behind a desk. He actually gets out there and leads by example. And I'm actually worried that if he ever retired or left our police force, I'd have to replace him with a chief and with a traffic officer. So.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions on the presentation. On the picture you showed of Juanita Drive walkway improvements, there's a bicycle and a pedestrian painted on the lane there, the bike lane, but there's a sidewalk. Now, where do the pedestrians walk? On the bike lane? Is that what that is, a pedestrian and on top above the bicycle?
In that situation, yes, the pedestrians should be on the sidewalk. But that double marking is consistent all the way from the intersection with 178th.
Some areas where there isn't a sidewalk, I know.
Yeah.
That's why, okay.
Yeah.
73rd and 182nd. We've had seniors, apartment residents on the other side of 73rd ask for a crosswalk across there. There's no light there. Traffic, once it gets past the fire station, goes pretty fast through there. And it's hard for people to get, especially elderly, to get across there on 73rd. So I don't know whether that's part of the neighborhood discussion, but it probably should be, because there are a lot of people that have asked about it for years. And in the four-way stop down at the foot of 61st and 175th that the bicyclists don't like to stop for, the road's closed now for 6 months. So are we still enforcing the stop signs? There's no traffic going across there other than construction.
There's no plan to do. We do the most emphasis in the summertime because the weather is not really conducive to going out there doing that in the winter. So and that's when the highest concentration of bicyclists use the trails in the summer. So we will continue to do it each summer. And now that traffic is closed down there, it's not really going to be a big issue as far as safety. So we won't be doing that until probably next summer.
But the intersection of 65th, the stop sign on the trail there.
Yeah, there is.
And fatality.
Like I say,
we've had some emails that have come through on Kenmore neighbors complaining about Kenmore police giving tickets for these things. But, gee, it's a safety hazard. They really need to stop and look.
Well, it's,
And I
don't know
don't
what to
know
say
when
about
they'll
the
get
people
message,
complaining. It's probably
huh?
people that gotten tickets. So,
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
Have they invented bicycle chicanes that you could put on the Burke Gilman Trail? Make them go skinny and slow?
I'll look into that.
Councilmember Herbie.
Well, actually, can we seriously answer that?
Sure.
Brett, you are looking at that, right?
Yeah, I've actually been looking into something similar to that.
They have them down at Lake Forest Park at Ballinger.
Yeah.
When you come off the trail at that intersection going down the Civic Center, you can't just buzz across it. You have to zigzag through it.
Yeah.
Councilmember Herbig.
First of all, great. I'm just really impressed with all the work that staff has put in on this effort in the last year, and the ability to turn on a dime and really deliver has been amazing to watch. So I just want to say I really appreciate that. I was curious, down on the Burke-Gilman Trail, do we have any idea what the usage is on the Burke-Gilman versus cross traffic at, say, 61st or 65th?
We just recently completed a bike count, and we had, I believe, 300. I'm not sure what the directional split was, but I think we had 300 cyclists in the evening and about 150 in the morning on the Burke-Gilman, and they only recorded, only one of our people was actually recording the cross, and I think they only saw 20, 25.
Cars?
Cyclists going the other way at 61st.
No, but I was curious, do we have a traffic count for cars going through that four-way?
I don't have one directly, but I might be able. I have counts that are on either side of that. I might be able to.
Okay, because I'm just curious, because I imagine 61st is fairly heavily used by cars, but 65th is it's a fairly empty street most of the time. There's the occasional car that turns one way or the other, and I'm just guessing here, but my guess is there's much more bike traffic, say at the intersection of Burke-Gilman and 65th, than there is car traffic going through that intersection. And if that was two car intersections meeting, my guess is we just have the stops on the car side of that on 65th and letting traffic go through. Am I incorrect? I mean, we're looking at a couple hundred bikes going through versus a handful of cars.
Yeah.
If those were cars, wouldn't we just put stop signs on the less used side of that?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be.
Is there any thought about maybe doing that instead of, maybe letting the dominant mode actually own that right away and go through there, and making the cars slow down for a little bit?
It's certainly an option to look at, yeah.
Because I think as we move away from, as we kind of are changing our philosophy a little bit, I think it's worth looking at level of service for everybody. And if one mode is so dominant, as it probably is at 65th, if I had to guess, then maybe we need to kind of rethink how we approach that as far as safety goes. Because I'm guessing it's probably orders of magnitude higher bikes and peds are using that crossing versus cars needing to go through. So I think that's something we should look at going forward. Thank you.
Councilor Sperry.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. As I read through this, I was just amazed at all of the engineering and the education and the enforcement and what has been done. I can't remember this much effort being concentrated so quickly, so I really do appreciate it. I am going to ask a question about the intersection I think we're all asking about. Between the Burke-Gilman and 61st, and my question is actually more on the engineering side, and I know that intersection is being worked on. Are there going to be any changes to the intersection that might change behavior of either or?
You mean 65th and 175th?
No. I was actually thinking 61st. Am I mistaken that there isn't?
61st and 175th?
Yes. Is there something going to happen there? I know it's closed right now, but we're not changing anything. It's going to be, no, okay.
So with the regrading of the hill, with the okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So,
well, we've thrown around a lot of 60s here. So
yes.
61st.
So 61st, 522, and 175th. So that hill is shut down right now to rebuild walls in that area. And our goal is to make it flatter on the top, on the 522 side, so when you're waiting for that signal, you have better visibility. Mm-hmm. It'll actually make it a little steeper on the actual hill itself.
Oh, really?
And then we'll be building a nice pedestrian bicycle facility on the east side of the hill, so you'll have a nice facility where none existed before. So what I tell folks is it's going to be ugly minus a hair. For cars, but there'll be a much better ped bike facility down the hill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councilor Danuski and then Councilor Smith.
I just wanted to say thanks to everybody on staff. You look at this report, it's amazing how much we've accomplished, so thank you.
Councilor Smith.
Pretty much the same thing. I know this is a lot of work, and it really is impressive when you actually go through it and listening to you speak about it this evening and going through all the engineering efforts, enforcement, education, everything. It's the whole package, and it's really exciting to see. And it was funny, is when I was looking at the engineering, I actually thought of one that I know it's been approved by us, but it's not even on here, that is, I think, a significant one, and that's the no left-hand turn when you're heading north on 68th under 175th. And I think that's going to be a pretty significant just improvement, too, as far as vehicles and pedestrians. So, awesome.
Anything else?
And there's also Imagine Kenmore, so stay tuned on that. And I'll talk about it during my staff report.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of comments from the public that they're pleased with the direction we're going and with Target Zero. And I've got to tell you, that little boy that you sold this bicycle helmet today was so proud and so happy. Little lights on his shoes going, and he was happy. He was a happy little camper. Nothing else. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think you should sell some of those helmets to the skateboarders, too.
Might be a hard sell. All right. Staff report. Mr. Carlin Z.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I have several things. You see one item there in particular, but there's a couple other things I'd like to talk about as well. On the Puget Sound Energy franchise agreement, we have initiated negotiations with PSE. We have sent them an official letter saying we need to start negotiating their franchise agreement. I would like your input and feedback on main deal points. So I'd like you to be thinking about that. Here are some examples, and at a future council meeting, we'll have more of a list to give you and for you to react to. But over the next week or so, if you have any other things when it comes to electric and gas utility franchise agreement. We'd love to hear from you on that, and we can add it to the list. But chief among the deal points is going to be system reliability. And in particular, we're going to be asking them to take assertive measures on what we call Circuit 26. And have I talked to you all about Circuit 26? Yep. Oh, okay. Those of you who haven't heard about it, I'll cover it in more detail in our one-on-ones and also at a future council meeting. But it includes the northwest portion of the city. So think of north of Bothell Way and west of 68th Avenue. That's basically, well, actually, it goes all the way even further past 73rd Avenue, too. So it's much of the northern end of the city, not just northwestern. But Circuit 26 in particular has been a problem child because it has a unique neighborhood distribution line that goes through backyards instead of along the road. And PSE, it might be PSE's longest, most troublesome, non-right-of-way located distribution line in their whole system. And it's been a culprit, not the culprit, but it's been a culprit in a lot of power outages in the northern part of the city. And so we really want to be assertive with them on getting Circuit 26 addressed. And we have some ideas along those lines, including the possibility of undergrounding that distribution line. Also, increasing the frequency of tree trimming, especially for Circuit 26. Right-of-way access and pavement restoration is also a standard deal point to look at in a franchise agreement. Also, again, this gets back to system reliability, but the ability for backup service from adjacent electric utility providers such as Seattle City Light and/or Snohomish PUD. This is a non-exclusive franchise with PSE, and we want to talk about the possibility of Seattle City Light being able to come in and provide service if possible, and all the details that go along with that. Communications with customers could be another deal point, improving the way PSE communicates with customers, both when there's power and no power. So those are some examples of deal points. But again, if there are some things that you can think of that you'd like us to address, we'd be happy to add that to the list. And at a future council meeting, we can kind of provide a more comprehensive list. This is something we can't necessarily talk to you about in exec session. So negotiating strategy for a franchise agreement like this, that there isn't really a legitimate reason to talk about it in executive session. But if you can just give me guidance on main deal points, then that's something that we can run with during negotiations. And again, I don't need your guidance tonight. I just want you to start thinking about things that you might want to see in a franchise agreement. All right. Imagine Kenmore update. Towards the end of this week, we should get a draft report from Burke Associates that summarizes all the input we received so far. So from the online interactive map, the Survey Monkey, the open house, all the other comments, we're going to get a good summary. And we'll have that probably to give to you and talk about at the November 9th City Council meeting. Not 100% sure on that, but I think that's what we're shooting for. Also, towards the end of this week, they're going to give us draft survey questions for a scientific random survey. This will be the first of 2 surveys. This first survey will ask kind of generally what their priorities are when it comes to PED, bike safety, and also parks. The second survey will be done in the spring, and we'll be asking more pointed questions about what would they be willing to pay and for what, and those types of things. So this first survey is more of a continuation of what we've seen so far, but so asking what they'd like to see, but not necessarily what they'd like to pay. This Saturday is Jack Crawford Day at Log Boom Park, and it's a chance to volunteer and help clean up the park. It goes from 9 to noon, and there will be a lot of restoration work, including planting of native vegetation. Lastly, I would like to have one-on-ones with you this week, and we're back to the normal schedule of the Wednesday afternoon for several of you, and the Thursday afternoon for a couple of you, and Councilmember Herbig, I believe Nancy Meehan is going to be reaching out to you if she hasn't already. So I think that is all I have for staff report.
All right. Comments, initiatives, reports. Councilmember Smith.
I really enjoyed the bridge tour on Saturday, and I found it to be quite educational, especially riding in the vehicle with a couple of engineers, and you get a lot answered. So that was really, I thought John did an excellent job putting everything together, and what we got to see was a good mix of different bridges. Enjoyed that. And then I guess also congratulations to Joanne for her GFAO award for the finance work for the city. That's fantastic. That's it.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you. The bridge tour was great. I really want to thank staff and all the council members that came. That was really, I don't think I'll ever look at bridges the same after that. It was really worthwhile, and I think hopefully it will have benefits as we move forward on the project. Second thing is very simple. On the franchise agreement thing, could we get a copy of our current one?
You bet.
Electronically mailed? That might help spark some ideas. Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Herbig.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Newski.
Nothing from me.
Deputy Mayor.
A couple of things. The mayor and I, along with Richard Sawyer and Eric Edmond, went with the representatives from the Army Corps of Engineers on Friday on a boat trip of different wetlands around Lake Washington. We started off going up Swamp Creek, up the Sammamish River, and looking at things there and looking at the site where possibly some restoration might be done. The engineers that were with us from the Corps of Engineers were involved in the 1135 program, which is a funding program for restoration of wetlands and correcting some of the unfortunate environmental impacts that the Corps has done in years past. And there's a pot of money there. Any one project can receive up to $10 million. The difficulty in it is that we have to come up with the matching funds of about 20-25% of that. It doesn't have to be all in one phase. It could be phased in different ways, and there is a lot of grant money from ecology and wildlife and salmon recovery and all those sources that I think we should pursue. The Swamp Creek Squires Landing Park is what we were looking at. We did a master plan of that a number of years ago. You might remember it was $13 million to restore that area and develop it, and then it was put on the back burner because of probably the price tag for one. But here's an opportunity where we can get some federal financing, and this group of engineers, I thought the biggest advantage of the tour was not seeing different wetland areas, because with the lake as low as it was, we couldn't really get into a lot of them. Like Mercer Slough was 2 feet deep at the entry to it, and we couldn't get in with a boat. But the biggest advantage of the biggest benefit from this tour was getting to know these engineers and finding out where they're coming from, what they could do for us and possibilities and so on, and what they expected of us. And then we could learn from them as to what we might expect from them. And I thought it was productive. And I think we should pursue some alternative sources of funding to help us take advantage of this source of money and to develop the Squires Landing Park. Two other things. I'm sorry that Chief Souther left, but there's a no parking sign on 73rd for southbound traffic. No parking south of this sign. It's about 50 feet from the corner. And it's that way for visibility. As you're coming out 182nd and you want to make a right or a left turn, you can't see the oncoming traffic when cars are parked there. This weekend there was a car and a panel van ahead of that there, and there was no way to see without getting your nose out on 73rd. So I'd like to request that the police department continue to enforce that no parking there. And just a simple question, there are all these no parking signs in our parking lot out here. Why are they all there along the side of the parking lot tonight?
Yeah, because of the high demand on the skate park, there was cars parking on that parallel curb.
Okay.
And that was creating a safety issue.
Yeah, fire lane.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I went both on the Army Corps tour and the bridge tour, and great information. I think we all learned quite a bit. So I'm on the King County Board of Health, and there is going to be a health clinic down at the Seattle Center for 3 days for a number of people that can't necessarily afford to go. So as somebody who sits on the Board of the Health, I was shamed into going. That I can sit up there, but I don't have any idea of what it's like. So I have volunteered, and I am going to be working from midnight till 5 a.m. And so we're going to, because they're going to be lining up all night long. It's going to be pretty crowded, so we're going to out there and make sure they're warm, make sure, they've got coffee or some stuff. And so anyway, that should be really exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that. Not in the middle of the night, no. But the clinics are running all day long. There'll be dental care, there's eye vision care, there's all sorts of stations set up. So it's very thorough. And last year I think was a huge success. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do this. I know I have talked about it before and sort of met with apathy, but that's okay. In the process of setting up a joint meeting with NUD, and I think probably in the spring we'll do one with North Shore School District. They're just helpful to keep us an idea of what's going on, I think. Stacy and I, a couple of weeks ago, we went and saw Fernell Miller.
Yes.
This is an amazing lady who has evidently been with the school system for a number of years. That runs an exercise program up at Arrowhead. And this is a family health and fitness night that she does. And I was just floored. It was pirates.
She was a lot of fun.
She was a lot of
It was
fun.
a lot of fun.
And so we got invited to the pumpkin thing up at Bothell High. But I'm very impressed with the program she runs and the way she gets the kids involved in the exercise and everything else. It just fits in with everything else that we're trying to do for the kids. So I'm going to really try hard to get Congresswoman Delveni out, because I know that's important to her, family health and fitness. And so I think it would be really good to get her out and up there to see Fernell.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful when we do it back at Arrowhead, not the Pumpkin Run.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Pumpkin
I
Run
agree.
is a crazy
Right,
place.
no, when February timeframe
Yeah,
is when we're
perfect.
back in
Yeah.
Arrowhead. So I'm gonna push to do that. So then the public health thing in Chicago, I'll tell you about that next week because it's still 2 weeks out. So I just had a call with the White House today trying to lay over what we're going to talk about and stuff, but it's, yeah. Triathlon Speedy Reedy in the summer. So think about, we're going to be trying to do a triathlon here and working with Speedy Reedy and seeing if we can't
Is this something Speedy Reedy normally does? Is that what you're saying?
No, Speedy Reedy was willing to help in it, and so.
So is it something that you're kind of leading? Ah.
And my wife
Are you going to
wants-
run it?
My wife wants to
Well, your wife
be
wants
the
to.
organizer.
So we're talking swimming and running?
Organizer.
My goodness.
So we're trying to keep staff involvement out of this, or something that the community can put on. And Leslie's shaking her head no, but, so anyway.
You know, I actually thought you said a triathlon of speed reading.
No, with Speedy Reedy.
I thought that would be
Speedy
so boring. But
Swimming, biking, running, and reading.
Yeah, there you go. So we're looking at how we can do
Gotta
this.
get through war and
and
peace.
how we can do this and utilize what we have around here. Somebody suggested we could do a run in St. Edwards. We could swim from St. Edwards to Log Boom, and we could, or some combination of that, and then bike. So anyway, just things that are planned for next year to go along with the stand-up or the hand-powered watercraft race from Redmond to Kenmore and the mini hydros. So anyway, nobody's got anything else?
Your Honor, just two more things I forgot.
Sure.
This year just flew by, and we need to schedule a night for you guys to evaluate me. So that we need to figure that out.
I had to get that set up about a month or two ago.
I know.
I thought we got Michael Pendleton coming here.
We've got to get on it. So stay tuned. I'll have Nancy Meehan schedule something.
So we need to have an evaluation to give Michael a chance to do his job and everything else, and it really needs to be end of October.
That's not
First week of November is gone.
Yeah, it might actually be early December when you get it done. So sorry about that.
Hold your breath on any kind of results.
And then January retreat, we need to be thinking about that. So if there are any weekends in January that are off limits, I don't think playoffs will be an issue this year. So, I think we'll be okay.
Oh, ye of little faith. Ooh is right. I think I've talked to most of you, so I think La Conner is the site, and we will sort of go for a date. With that, adjourned.
Can I have a chance on Wednesday?